If bees were to disappear from the earth, mankind would have only 4 years left to live. This quote is originally attributed to Albert Einstein and is the main theme of the 2012 documentary by Marcus Imhoff, More Than Honey. You may have seen online or read news articles about how bees have been disappearing lately. This riveting topic has had people around the globe spinning for answers since 2006. So what exactly is going on? Why are these bees disappearing, and why is it important? Last year I read an article myself about this topic and I became extremely interested. I decided to do my own research and also follow along with what other researchers were saying about the topic, and I'm going to share with you what I learned. Today I'm going to talk about why bees are disappearing, what this means for bees, and most importantly, what this means for us. Before I really jump into it, I first wanted to briefly touch on what bees we're talking about. All bees have been on the decline since 2006, but really what we're talking about is one specific bee, and that's the European honeybee, which is our typical honeybee that we see all the time. It's a honey-producing bee, and it's also a choice bee for many beekeepers around the world. So now that I've talked about that real quick, let's go ahead and jump in and talk about why these bees are disappearing. Researchers and scientists and beekeepers alike can agree that there's not one particular cause of this disappearance. It's really a combination of interrelated causes. Colony collapse disorder is the word that I'm going to use to describe this disappearance. J. Kim Kaplan reported in A Complex Buzz, an agricultural research magazine, in 2008 that 30 to 90% of beekeepers' hives were disappearing. That's what I'm talking about with this colony collapse disorder. It's the disappearance of that 30 to 90% of bees. Marla Spivak, a bee researcher, hosted a TED Talks show on the subject of the disappearance of bees in June 2013. She shared that bees have actually been in the decline since World War II. She talked about how this was because of many reasons. First of all, because that was when farmers started to use pesticides and chemicals and synthetic fertilizers in their farming practices. It was also when farmers started planting single crops such as corn over vast areas of space, and this really eliminated food sources for many bees. Brian Walsh wrote in Time magazine in his article, The Plight of the Honeybee, in 2013, of another source of colony collapse disorder, and that's pesticides. Neonicotinoids were introduced in the 1990s, and it's a chemical that farmers use basically in place of a pesticide. How it works is farmers will soak their seeds in this chemical and then plant the seeds. This eliminates having to spray for plants, and they can really control the substance more. This doesn't mean that bees aren't exposed to it though. Bees absorb the chemicals through the pollen, and while they get small doses of it, over time it's really detrimental to the bees. Pat Thomas wrote in his article, Give Bees a Chance, in Ecologist magazine in 2007, he informed us of another source of this colony collapse disorder, and that was parasites. Specifically the Varroa destructor mite. It's basically like a tick that attaches itself to bees and can cause very physical problems with them and also spread diseases throughout entire colonies. So it's a combination of all these things, a lack of food sources, pesticides and chemicals, and also parasites that's causing this colony collapse disorder. So now that I talked about what's causing all these bees to disappear, let's talk about what that means for bees. All species have to change and adapt in order to survive. We've basically domesticated these bees into doing work for us. And in the documentary that I talked about, More Than Honey, they really went into detail in looking at what bees are doing to adapt and to change to all of this. Marcus Imhoff, the director, believes he has found what bees have done to really survive in this life that they're living, and that's Africanized bees. In bee experimenting in the 1950s in Brazil, 26 swarms of African bees escaped from the lab that they were working in and migrated north throughout Central America and all the way up to the United States, and along the way they bred with our European bees. Jim Kaplan wrote in his article, What's Buzzing with Africanized Bees in Agricultural Research in 2004, that when these African bees mated with our European bees, their genes actually won out. And it created a hybrid species, according to Attack of the Killer Bees, and Current Events magazine in 2012 that we know today as Africanized honeybees. You and I actually may know them better as killer bees. These killer bees are much faster and more efficient in making honey, and they're also immune to a lot of the diseases and parasites that our European bees struggle with. So I've discussed why these bees are disappearing and what it means for bees, and I really want to talk about what this means for us. We may not think that bees are a crucial part of our life, but they really are. They actually produce and pollinate about a third of our food sources. Brian Walsh, who I mentioned before, wrote in Time magazine about a Whole Food store in Rhode Island that, in a campaign to showcase how important bees are, they took all of the food off of the shelves that was actually produced by bees, and that bees had a part in helping pollinate. Out of the 453 foods that they had, they took 237 off of the shelves. That's incredible. That's a lot of food that we would be without if bees were to disappear. So as you can see, bees really are an important part of our life, and they have a certain niche that really no one can hold. So next time you're at the grocery store, look around and see all of the great foods that we have access to and thank the bees, because they really are responsible. We may think of them as pests or annoying, but they really are important in our lives, and they really are amazing creatures.